Interestingly enough, that is, to us, the future of music. If you look at an artist like, say, Flume is a person with a computer. That's his instrument. His instrument is the computer. He may get singers, he may get guitarists in and things like that to add to the production.
He may play the guitar and record it onto the computer, but
correct. But the computer is the instrument now. Yeah. There's still plenty of room for guitars and drum machines and exterior things, but the computer is the core instrument.
Now, what I want to get onto as well, you said you split the shed and you made you started a label as well. How far was the label after starting the recording?
Probably about three.
Yeah, three.
It's about 3 years, and really the label came about because, obviously once we had the studio, Initially, we just started making our own versions of other people's tracks. And then we started making our own drum tracks, and eventually we made our own track, and we're like, what are we going to do with this?
Yeah.
How do we get this song out? Do we think it's worth, do we play it out? Yes. Do we want other people to hear it? Yes. How do we do that? And there was not really too many avenues at the time, because obviously the major labels hadn't embraced dance music at this stage, to the extent that house music, I mean by that, obviously they'd been through the disco era, and they'd been through like the R&B era that was starting at that point in time, with Bobby Brown, and they'd had dance music like Whitney Houston, but as far as underground club music, we were just like, how do we do this? Let's just do it ourselves. So we did our first thing ourselves, and by that time, Colin, who started the label with us, was working at MDS, which was Mushroom Distribution Services. And at the time, they were the biggest music distributor in Australia. And so basically, as opposed to a record label like a Sony or a Virgin or an EMI, where you're signing your product to them and they're doing all of that, the independent distributors and even Inertia, which is still around now and ironically is run by Colin Daniels, 20 years later, that's where people are taking their music, they're paying to get it pressed, they're paying to get the artwork done, the mastering, the recording, and they're paying a distribution fee. So our first music came out through MDS, and once we had one thing out that we'd done, we had other people say, I've got this track, can you put it out? Sure. And we ended up signing other people, and it grew from there.
So you just gave everyone a home, really?
Yeah, well, there was a lot of people with similar frustrations as producers as us that were like, I'm making electronic music, I've got my, simple computer here, but I've got talent, so I want to make music, and that's what we really wanted to embrace. Yeah. We weren't a global label at the time, but we had artists that came to Australia that we worked with, because communication overseas, I'm sure people watching this would be like, I don't understand that concept, but communication overseas was via a phone or a fax machine. Yeah.
So were there bulletin boards at any stage once the 28.8 modem came in?
That's right. Well, there was absolutely no modems. It was fax machines.
That's right. It was earlier than that.
The only way to communicate to the UK, for example, was via a fax or a phone call.
Yeah.
So I know it is unbelievable to consider. So we weren't a global label. We released our music globally, but we could only connect with artists locally. So, for example, Carl Cox came to Australia. We had an artist called Ground Level who came out of Geelong. So we were finding Australian artists. So we were what a lot of people called Australia's first dance label. Mm-hmm. And we were developing Australian talent and winning awards for it. Over the years, we would win ARIA awards for best dance releases. So the label was growing and developing Australian talent until about halfway through when we started.